Alrighty, guys, welcome to tonight's charting session. Hopefully, everybody is doing well. Happy Wednesday, happy FOMC. Let's jump in and talk about the trades today. I'm up, or actually, I'm not up. I'm down $300 today, so I'm pretty much down break even. And today was one of those days where the plan played out perfectly, just the execution was a little bit off, and a little also just kind of a bit of market kind of unluckiness. I always don't like to say unlucky when we're trading, but there are times when there is kind of times when you feel a little bit unlucky on sort of things. Wait, let me make sure you guys can see here. Okay. So I want to go through a little bit from not really much of the morning session, as I didn't really focus on it at all. I didn't trade in the morning. You can see again, pretty much all morning leading up into FOMC is exactly what we expect. A lot of time going into FOMC day like this, we want to stick away from the morning. A lot of times you're just going to set yourself up for failure, because most likely market's just going to chop back and forth, generating liquidity for the move later in the PM session. So first things first, let's kind of replay here to the first trade and kind of go through exactly what I was thinking, what was the rights, what were the wrongs, and kind of what are the learning lessons from today. So first things first, bigger time frame of kind of what I wanted to actually see with the bias going into FOMC was a bullish bias. I did want to be bullish. I wanted to see us start to work our way to the upside and start to work our way towards all of this buy side that we've been generating, especially this recent high. And then also the bigger time frame for value gaps that were here. There was a 30-minute above that high that I wanted to see us rebalance to as well. And on the bigger time frame, there is a 1 hour bullish for value gap that we were displacing off of. Now, another little thing that you could add to the conviction to this, if you wanted to, that I was looking back at and I noticed, is this, actually, where was this drawn? Did I draw this differently? Maybe I am actually capping here. I take it back. I really wouldn't even use that as conviction. That's why I said if you wanted to, but it doesn't really. Yeah, I wouldn't be. What I was looking at is this standard deviation. We were still in this projected area to look for a bounce, but it wasn't something I was focused on at the time, so I wouldn't really be looking back on it in a sense either. Main thing though, 1 hour for value gaps bullish. We've been selling off all morning, back to equilibrium of the previous price leg. If we look at the recent low that manipulated this low on Tuesday, I believe, ended up running all the way back. Morning FOMC pulls back again. Always. What the kind of the program we always like to see with FOMC is first 30 minutes is always going to be either consolidation, setting up for the move in the opposite direction, and we want to see some form of manipulation, SMT, something like that, right? We want to see manipulation and signs of it in the opposing direction of where we're expecting. So first 20 minutes is then when Powell comes on afterwards, and we're then expecting to see the actual move, which is in the opposing direction. So we know market ends up opening at, not opening, but FOMC opens up, and immediately here we start to continue to sell back off, and until 30 at once Powell starts speaking is actually when we start getting the good price action. Now, I took a setup early, and the first trade I actually took was in the first couple minutes of FOMC. Now, looking back, kind of the things that I was recognizing about this, in my opinion, is I do not think this was ready yet. I think this was more so a trade that I kind of wanted to put on early, because I think a lot of the times recently, the volatility that we've been getting in the market has been kind of just as soon as this big engulfing candle came in is when I entered long. So the bias that I had for this and what I was looking at the time is this for value gap to the left of us was holding on the lower time frame. Again, bigger time frame, there really wasn't anything there yet. We were still holding the bearish 5-minute for value gap on ES as well. But these internal lows got taken. FOMC opened up. We had our fast move lower. We took these recent lows, and this big engulfing came in. And I thought this was enough for me to kind of put on my first little position here. Now, what I do regret from this trade is, number one, I don't think this was a high quality setup. I don't think I should have taken this setup. And I also think I put on too much size. I was 3 contracts deep here. And I think this loss was like almost a 3K if it was not a 3K loss. So a loss that most likely should not have happened at this time. If it was to have happened, there should have been lower size, 2 contracts, 1 contract, something like that. So first trade ended up getting stopped. At this point in time, right when this got stopped, I said, okay, Justin, there's really not anything here yet. Like, let's wait for Powell. Let's wait for more confirmation here. Again, the buy still plays out, but I need to see more structure, more confidence. So we end up building more structure. At this point in time, ES ends up putting in a new low. So right when ES puts in a new low, this is exactly what I'm looking for, right? It's FOMC. Powell's about to come on the market. And what did the market just do? Notice how the market aligns with it too, which is so funny. Right when Powell's about to come on, when we expect to see a reversal, we have an SMT at the lows. And so again, what am I looking for? I'm looking for a change in the state. I'm looking for a fair value gap. So as soon as this candle comes in, I enter long, and I put my stop at the candle low. Now, this is kind of the thing when I was talking about, I don't like using the word unlucky, but this one's a little bit unlucky. Market ends up running all the way back down, taking the recent low. And again, this is just the market causing max pain, purging as much liquidity as possible, because then we ended up putting in a little baby SMT at this point here. But again, as soon as that fair value gap got ran through and I got stopped out, and then right after, this fair value gap gets ran through to the upside, I re-entered back long. Now, one thing that I noticed, because somebody sent me a screenshot and I actually noticed because they said #forever model, and I realized this entry was the only entry that was technically a forever model, because this is the only time where we actually run through and displace through a clean fair value gap after that SMT was put in place with the change in the state. So both of these entries are valid. Don't get me wrong. Like any entry here after that SMT and that we got displacement is a good entry. I think this is just kind of one of those times where you get a little unlucky. We pull all the way back, take the recent low, get stopped out, and it's kind of up to you in the moment if you have the conviction to re-enter. A lot of the time, the answer is probably no. At this point in time, I knew my bias. I wanted to see that happen. I was pretty confident with it. Once that candle came in, and then we just had an immediate candle right back up. I was like, okay, even if I'm wrong with this, I'm still fine with putting on another trade here and giving an extra risk. And again, right after, we ended up just pumping straight towards that buy side level that we were looking at. So again, by the time that this ended up playing out, it pretty much just brought me back on the day. And what also sucked about this trade is I didn't realize that my cons were only on 2 on the side. So I took 3 contract loss here, 3 contract loss here, and then I accidentally, because I was trying to set my limits, but then I didn't realize I changed the number and I only slapped 2 contracts long. So I still was able to, make some money back on it, but it didn't give me the satisfaction and sort of the return that I should have gotten from it anyway too. So today was kind of one of those days where not everything played out perfectly, and sometimes those days are going to happen. And the biggest thing that we can do on days like this is always reflect on just the things that we did right and what did we do wrong. Like if there are things that are out of our control, what can we know from it? What can we learn from it? How did we handle it? What was the decisions that we made to handle it? And is there anything that I can get out of today to, going into the rest of the week? And so for me, the biggest thing is there are going to be times when you do get a trade like this, and don't think that the market is out to get you, right? The market is algorithmic. Trust me, it's going to seem like the market is going to be hunting stops, and trust me, it will. But this is kind of one of those days where don't think of it like that. Like you get stopped sometimes, you don't get stopped sometimes. And the market's going to give you opportunity. And I think the biggest thing to always focus on is, did you do what you needed to do? Because that's all that matters. Did you focus on good capital preservation when you needed to? Did you be patient? Did you wait? Did you step away when you needed to? Are you over trading, right? Like, what are the things that are actually your decisions? Because those are the things that we are actually inputting, right? Trading is an input-output game. Whatever you input, you output. So if you want to make money, what is the input from trading? Good habits, patience, discipline, focusing on good setups. These are the things that we always want to focus on. Not did the market, stop me out and then immediately go back in my favor, right? Yeah, there are times when, we need to reflect on those because it might be a problem in our edge or a problem in our system and where we're putting our stops, and that's always something good. But the first thing that you should always ask yourself is, was it a decision that I made? What was in my control? What was the things that I did right? What was the things that I did wrong? So overall today, I'm honestly quite happy with it. Obviously, it should have been a lot bigger of a day as it is, as that first trade was too big of a loss, trade that shouldn't have happened. Second trade was unlucky, also gave back profits. And then, of course, the trade that actually, ended up playing out was lower contracts. But again, it's super easy to be in the perspective to be able to be in a scarcity mindset when it comes to these days. And I don't think enough people talk about this enough with trading and being in a scarcity mindset, because I think it sets you up for failure. And there's a lot of times when something like today will happen and you'll be super confident in a trade. You'll end up taking a long. You'll get stopped on this. And it hurts because you're immediately thinking like, this is exactly what I wanted. Like, not only did I expect this to happen, I tried putting size on, and it seemed like the market purposely put me in its favor, or put me in its disfortune. And I think we have to always reflect on it and give us some grace and just say, hey, it is what it is. So honestly, not too upset about today. I'm really more so happy that the model and just the bias ended up playing out, right? Building conviction is always going to be the thing that we want to focus on the most as well. Like, this was a trade that we planned for, we executed with, and it played out exactly how we wanted to. Not exactly, of course, but pretty much so. And then the rest of the day, after that first kind of internal move was taken, again, I took all my contracts off at that high. I want to see if there was really anything else today. It's kind of crazy. We came all the way back down, put in equal lows, and then ran all the way back. Yeah, this was the little soup. And we just pretty much ran out. All right, let's clear this up. Can you tell me the difference when you wait for higher time frame change in the state and the times in which you take it on the 1 minute and the lower time frame higher, then lower without looking at the higher time frame? Well, okay, so it all depends on what's the conviction and what is the market showing me we want to go. So the times in which I'm waiting for a higher time frame change in the state, like, so for example, like when we look at today in this kind of perspective, right? If I'm bullish and I'm looking at like the 15-minute, this is my change in the state, right? Or if I'm on a 30-minute and it changes to this is my change in the state, right? But what are these changes in the state are telling me? Because by the time these changes in the state tell me something, this internal high is taken, right? So it's completely two different trades. The difference between the alignment of them is that you are aligning the bias. There's two different things, aligning model and aligning bias. Aligning model would mean, yeah, waiting for this close and then waiting for that pullback to then take it off the change in the state, which we ended up still doing, right? You still get the points out of it. But what I mean by aligning with bias and what's different about it is I'm still, before this change in the state is even put in, I'm expecting it. Why am I expecting it? Because we're back at equilibrium. We're in a 1 hour fair value gap. I'm expecting to get displacement back towards the upside. We're still bullish on the bigger time frame. I'd want to see us continue to work back a little higher. And so at this point in time, I'm expecting this bullish imbalance to hold. So if I'm expecting this bullish bounce to hold, I'm not just taking a random setup unless there is a reason for me to. Now, keep in mind, today's setup is not a setup I would normally take if it was not FOMC, because I know how FOMC works. FOMC, I have a lot of hours watching it and the conviction of normally how it will move. And today was a perfect example of it if you want to go back, study it, screenshot it, put it in the journal, because it's a great example. Once we were in this bigger time frame imbalance, again, the bigger time frame bullish bias has not played out yet because we haven't had our change in the state, right? This is our change in the state on the bigger time frame, like one of these highs. So at this point in time, we haven't gotten it. So you say, Justin, why are we not waiting for the bigger time frame, but yet we trade the internal change in the state? So we end up having this SMT. We end up getting change in the state. And then we take a long. Why is that? Because we're favoring the bias, which is number one, bigger time frame for rally gap. SMT at the lows, changing the state to the upside. But more importantly, this setup, in my opinion, is good and favorable because it aligns with Powell coming on stage. FOMC, we expect slow opposite move for the first 30 minutes, right? If I'm going to mark out these time windows here, and you can actually exactly see what happens during this day. From 2 o'clock to 2:30, we slowly chop towards the downside. To what? Manipulate. Not on NQ, on ES, because then we put this SMT in. So then once we manipulate it, notice 10:30 opens up. Powell hops on stage. Everything we've done to the downside, there's SMT. Powell hops on stage. Boom. Influx of volatility. We displace to the upside. At that point in time, everything I've needed to see has been happening. Because then we expect, again, when Powell comes on stage is when we expect a reversal. And you can see right after 2 o'clock or 2:30, we then get that reversal with volatility and with efficiency. Took this trade using the 15-second as a continuation. Took small size. I'm happy with it. Worked out, but I went against my rules and took more trades than I should have. What was the best? What would have been the best discipline? I guess. Okay, let's see. This long is what you're saying? Yes. Where was this at? Was this here? Honestly, I don't mind it. I honestly don't mind it. And the reason I don't mind it is because by these internal highs, I feel like you should be stopped at break even. And that's the only really reason I say that, is I don't mind it. Because by the time you enter in this imbalance after the change in the state, my stop would not be this recent low. This is just too much risk in my opinion. If I'm trading this internal model, I feel like it just doesn't make sense because there's not enough conviction that this is the low. So if I am taking this kind of trade, my stop's above the change in the state, something like here. And when this internal high gets taken, I move my stop to break even and I just let it do its thing. That's kind of how I would manage this trade. All right, let's talk about going into tomorrow and kind of what I want to see. Double check news. I believe we do have news tomorrow. I think it's 8:30. 8:30 news. Let's take a look. $8:30. Unemployment claims. Perfect. Okay. All right. Going into tomorrow, kind of where we are based in price action right now is I'm still going to most likely have a bullish bias going into tomorrow. Now, buy side internally will most likely be taken in the overnight session is this recent high. Looking at where ES is, I'm very curious, and I do want to see if this wants to hold bearish, because there is a part of me that also, keep in mind, when I look at ES, I'm looking at kind of like this. So I do want to watch ES and see if we do want to reverse back down, but also keep in mind the bigger time frame is very, very bullish on ES. Internal low is taken. We've had our daily change in the state to the upside. We rebalanced all the way back off on Monday. Keep in mind, Monday at the start of the week sells us all the way back off, taps to the daily for value gap, rebalances us, and then right now we're just continuing to consolidate in this little range. But I really honestly like where we are. I have a pretty loose bias going into tomorrow. I really want to see what happens in the overnight session. I'm leaning bearish, but that could easily change, really, to be honest, depending on kind of what happens in the morning. So, any questions? I'm honestly really liking where we are, though. I'm just ready to I feel like my trading's just been super slow, which I'm okay with, but I'm starting to get a little antsy and almost to a point, and I feel like we've talked about this before, but there needs to be. I fully believe you cannot just trade, and I want to be so real with you guys. You cannot just trade, and the reason you cannot just trade is because, and this is in every area. This is financial. This is in as a hobby. This is as a investment. In any way that you look at trading, it cannot just be this. And the reason I say that is because this is not a working job. You do not work to trade, right? And there's times when, like, the reason I'm saying this is because the last week I feel like I haven't been doing enough with my trading. But I then ask myself and I say, Justin, what does enough look like? Because if I was to be on the charts more, or journaling more, or whatever that is to me, or taking more trades, that doesn't necessarily equate to more success. So you have to always remind yourself and shift your perspective that you need some sort of outlet, an outlet outside of trading that is going to provide you with the time to do something, the focus of it, possibly the financial benefits of it, and something that you enjoy doing. Because a lot of the times, if trading is the main thing that you do in your life, and it is, there's always going to be times when you're constantly working towards more of it. And sometimes that can be a negative thing. So always remind yourself, you will always do better when you are trading less. You will always do better when you feel like you are doing the least amount of work. But if you are anything like me, you do not like doing the least amount of work. I do not like it. When I'm doing the least amount of work in my life, I feel like I am wasting my potential. I'm wasting the opportunity that God has given me. And I feel like it's extremely important to always work the muscles in which you have. And trading is just one muscle in your life. And what I love about this community, and what I always love talking to you guys about, is things besides trading, because I want this community to always be something that is focused on benefiting each other. And any content that I make, any YouTube videos, anything that I talk about, I love talking about things outside of trading, because it is just as important as trading itself. And I think people don't realize that until years into trading, where you get to a point where once trading is like any other life to you, like trading becomes so normal where it's not something special. It's like, and I talked about this in the video, it's like drinking a glass of water. Like almost every single day for the last 4 or 5 years of my life, I've woken up and traded. So you have to keep that in mind, right? It becomes a very big habit and part of your life that once it's kind of stops or slows down in a sense where you're not as active in it, sometimes it's perceived as negative in your brain. And you have to always kind of check yourself and make sure that it's not, because you have to remind yourself, you are being told to make the decision. You are not going to the market and saying, hey, give me a setup and I'm just going to force it. You sit and be patient and submissive to the opportunity that the market gives you. If you inflict your will in times in which there is no opportunity, you'll always be, most of the time, ending up in disarray. Heard a quote today, Justin, that goes with what you're saying now. Destiny isn't chosen, but is forged by the choices you make. Absolutely. Think trading before FOMC was done, but how does this trade look if FOMC was not in play model-wise? The trade of the 5-minute chart is to the left where the first SSL was taken and put SL break even, because I knew I was trading insufficient PA, so I waited for FOMC long and took that. Let's take a peek. Yeah, if this was pre-FOMC, honestly, any trade, really, depending on how good it is, even if it was a winner, I would still probably say to you that it's not the best trade. It's not the best trade that you could possibly take. If you always know that you're going to get least favorable price action, and again, I guarantee you, if you just reflect, one thing I want to say. Almost every session that we have together, we talk about rules. When was the last time that you've told yourself, reflected, been fully aware of what those rules are, and actively are trying to follow them? And how often are you trying to adapt, add, or take away from those rules? I'm very curious. And the reason I ask this question, and the reason I brought it up, is because there's times when we can be so there's every little bit an aspect of trading where, let's see, for example, you come into the day, just like today, FOMC, you know not to trade in the morning. Your plan is to trade FOMC, right? That's your plan. And I think this also has to go into account with treating trading like a business and respecting yourself. Because if you do not act like you are professional, then you're obviously not going to be a professional and you're not going to make money, right? You have to treat yourself like a professional. If you tell yourself you are going to not do something, or you tell yourself you are going to do something, you fucking do it out of respect of yourself and integrity. But everybody lives so much in the flesh and falls down to these ideas because in the moment it's so easy to get caught up in exchanging your long-term desires for short-term little dopamine hits. And so the reason why I always say reflect on your rules is because it's very easy to come into a day like this, take a trade when you shouldn't have, maybe make some money here and there, and then even worse, stick on the charts and then give it all back. Like, always, always, always. Doesn't matter how much you're making, doesn't matter how much you're losing. You should always be reflecting what is the correlation between that and your rules. And a lot of the times, you might be thinking that nothing needs change when sometimes there maybe is. But it only comes with time. And that's why submission to time is so important as well. Because a lot of the time, when people come to me and say, Justin, like, give me the answers, I can give you many, many answers. But what I will tell you is the best answers that you are looking for will come with doing it. Because you will find the answers you are looking for by doing it and actually seeing it and learning. Because the best conviction is not my conviction, it's your conviction. I was talking to my girlfriend about this. I was working through thinking not trading is a bad thing because I should be making money somehow, but I really do the path as the most success when you just let things come to me. Absolutely. And that's why I said it's so important to have something else. Were there moments in your life, Justin, where you knew you were destined for greatness, maybe an inner feeling or even something told you? Absolutely. And there's times in which I didn't too. There is times in which I have felt so, and I talked to Uno about this, and the way that I like to refer to it as, and kind of like the way that my brain thinks about quote destiny or like the man or the life that I'm supposed to live and be and do in my life. I think of it as like a string theory. And a string theory in my brain is like, if you can imagine a room with a bunch of strings from top to, like, from that are tied to the top of the ceiling to the bottom of the room. And it's just a bunch of strings, and there's just like, they're all white, and then there's just like this one red string. And that one red string is the life that you lived when you just decided to give it your all and be the best version of yourself. And like that red string is the string that, like, when you die and God, you know, is like, hey, look at this fucking string that you could have done, you know? And I think that the only reason that I think of life in that way is because I fully believe life should be nothing more taken than the biggest gift of all time. And if you treat life as a gift, you do not want to do anything more but to please the gift giver, in a sense, and take advantage of it as most as possible. And I think it's honestly, I think especially in today's society, we're constantly overlooked with problems, and there's a reason to hate the world, and, you know, death and destruction, and, you know, hunger, and all these things that go on in society that's constantly, you know, fed down your throat to make you believe that we live in such a terrible world. And you only live in a terrible world if you perceive it that way. I could show you that there's plenty of things that are happening on in this world constantly. There's killings that are going on right now. There's bombings. There's literally anything you could think of going on right now. But there's also everything that you can think of that's fantastic going on right now. There's love, there's experiences, there's deep connection, there's satisfaction, there's hard work, there's so many good things of life that it's up to you to just decide to flip the frequency of perspective. What lens are you viewing your life out of? Why are you waiting for God to show you the life that you should live or the feeling that you are supposed to want or have when it's up to you most of the time to flip the switch to do so? There's always been times where I've felt like I've been on that path of that string and I've been the best version of myself. And there's times where I haven't been. And the times in which I haven't been, I've called up to God and I'd be like, God, help me with this. Like, I'm struggling, I'm falling into sin or whatever it is. And a lot of the time, not just that, but I realize the common denominators of the things in which I always fall is environment. What are the environments I've been putting myself in recently? What are the people I've been hanging around recently? And what are the habits I've been doing recently? And those are the three things that are going to give me literally the clearest answer as to why I'm feeling, how I'm feeling, and how I can get back to where I need to be. Do you think it's almost imperative to have a second income so you don't have to put too much focus on trading? Well, the reason having a second income is good on trading is because you have to think about it this way. If I gave two people the exact same amount of money, but your perception of money will affect your decision making. Whether I give it to I could give money to a homeless person to trade with, and that homeless person could make a lot of money, and they could also make no money. And the reason that is because I could give it to a homeless person who's so disconnected from the idea of money that they just run it up. Or I take a homeless person that is so affected by the thing of money that they just, go buy a crack rock real quick. That's a possibility too. So it's like, and I've talked so much about this, like how you grow up, your household. What's your perspective of, the breadwinner in your house? And your perception of money growing up, did you go out and eat often? What was your lifestyle like? Because I think all of these things really affect the way that we think about money in our lives. And when we don't think about money and how we've gotten to where we are, there's no clarity as to how we can either, number one, undo it if there needs to be something that needs to change, right? It's like you need to understand how you are programmed. And you are specifically programmed unique. There's no other person that has lived your life. There's no other person with the same experiences as you. And if you don't take the time to reflect on your life, your childhood, in your upbringing, where you are right now in your life, the struggles that you've gone through, the successes that you've had, your strengths, your weaknesses, the things that help make you fall back into, pits, the things that bring you and lift you up. Like everybody is different and sensitized to different things. And if you want to live the best life and you want to have the best version of yourself and you want to make the most money, you have to sensitize yourself to being aware of these things, and not just sensitizing yourself and being aware of these things, but having the discipline to then change them if you are willing to. So I think life is a constant relationship of gratefulness to what you have and reflection to get to what you want and what you need. I think if you go into who you want to be as you deserve it more than just you're grateful for what you have, right? Gratefulness is one of the wonders of the world. There is so much that you can fix in your life just from practicing gratefulness. And sometimes that's very hard. Sometimes in my life it's super easy. My goal is to always live in a grateful mindset. Every second of the day. But I'm a blemished vessel. I am imperfect. I will always fall short. and that is us as humans. That's something that you can't get. There's no way around that. But what is important is to recognize that in the times in which you do fall, the times in which you do take those steps back, it's number one, it's happening for a reason, because sometimes you have to be in that position to then take the step up. You got to think about it like a rubber band, right? A rubber band has to pull back, sometimes quite far for it to then blast off a lot further. So God a lot of times gives you these moments and these experiences to make sure, hey, you shouldn't be doing this, and I'm going to make sure you feel it. But you also have to wonder and realize it's for you. In the time, it's very hard to go through hardships because we're not in that mindset. We're emotional, we're psychological, we think about all these things. We're not, thinking in turn. We're always in the flesh. But when you switch your perspective and you're able to get out of this mind vortex of problems and stress that you have in your brain of this needs to change, and I don't know what to do about this, and I don't know what to do about this. And as soon as you just take a deep breath and you're able to reflect on it and talk about it and just sit in time and think. A lot of 90% of the time you realize that all of those thoughts are just nothing. A lot of you realize that 90% of those thoughts are not real problems. They're problems manufactured by the enemy to keep you from getting everything that you want and in who you want to be and what you want to do. Justin, the model I've been working on has been making me build so much conviction that I trust it so much now. It took losses, but now it's making more and more sense and is very simple for me. How do you expand a model and make it better? Right now, your goal should not. Right now, your goal should be continuing to take as many trades as what you have right now. If you are continuing to build conviction on what you have. Don't change it. How can you expect to build a strong? How can you expect a plant to grow when you keep changing its pots? You can't keep changing your strategy. Does the gap up act as resistance like it did with ES or NQ, or will it run through? I know gaps usually fill, but it's the first time entering a gap. Will that act as a reversal resistance? That's a lot of times what we'd want to see, yeah. I'd want to see gaps act as almost like a PD array. We were talking about that yesterday. I'm not really sure if that was ever confirmed, if ICT actually talked about gaps as PD arrays, but I always have. My pastor recently talking about the difference between being grateful and being thankful. He said being grateful is an internal feeling that makes you feel good about yourself and life. Being thankful is an outward expression that you actually speak into the world, and it can be much more powerful when both are combined. Absolutely. Great way to put it. Because being grateful is almost like a perspective. Being thankful is an in-the-moment expression. I got you, Colt. Alrighty, guys. What time is it right now? 7:46. All right, we should be pretty good. Alrighty, guys. Enjoy your night. That is all I have for you tonight. May God bless you. I will see you all tomorrow morning. Get some rest. Let's finish the week off well. We have Thursday, Friday. And I will see you all soon. Sleep tight. Don't let the bed bugs bite. I'm gonna go snuggle up like a bug in a rug. I will see you all tomorrow. Peace out, guys.